But you come to that point. And so I'm sitting there in the chair and in my place, and I'm just like thinking, I put my head down, and all of a sudden I like look up, and Lawrence Fishburne's right there as Morpheus. He's just sitting right there in the chair across from me. Sunglasses, big leather dress, everything.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
So when you said that to me, I kind of, looked at him, and I was like, who dresses like this? Like, I'm not going to take a pill from somebody dressed like this. You look like Klaus Schwab's emperor. He looks like an intergalactic dictator. So anyway, so I metaphorically decided to take the red pill, and it actually wasn't that big of a choice for me. I'm like, I'm at this far. You can't stop. I doubt anybody in that situation that I was in would stop. Welcome, friends, patriots, and to all those who are out there listening in or watching on the If Not Us, If Not Now worldwide network. My name is Casper Slate. I'm super thrilled to bring you episode 1 of the If Not Us, If Not Now podcast. So very honored that you're listening along on this journey together as we build the world we all desire and deserve. I know that a little dramatic there, maybe that whole thing, but and especially maybe the worldwide network thing, but the reason I did that was because just a moment ago I was thinking about back in the day if there was actually a worldwide premiere or worldwide news broadcast. It was like a big deal, and there was the graphics and the voices and the music and everything. And now anybody in the world that has an internet connection, any type of microphone and a webcam if you want it or need it, can broadcast their voice to the entire planet, and that's just wild. That's just crazy to me, and that's pretty awesome. So let's get started with today's slate. At the top of each episode will be today's slate. It's going to be the slate of topics we're going to talk about that day. It's a little bit different today, as I am going to spend some time talking about my journey here and why I'm talking to you about this and why I started this, and it has to do with my journey. So if we were to focus on that story from start to finish, then we'd be here for 30 episodes. But, I would. You probably would be, I'm not doing this anymore. So I'd be here talking for 30 episodes. So this is kind of like an outline, if you will. And as we go through the show and go through the episodes, we'll unpack that crazy box. After that, we will get into the breaking the news. We will always have some headlines going on, some current events, but it's a different, unique take than what you'll get in the mainstream media that you'll only be able to get here. And then after that, we're going to wrap things up, and we'll wrap things up with what the episode is titled with, and that is A Do Hope. And that's all I'll say for now. And that is today's slate. So it's been a long and arduous journey, my friends. It started when I was young. I had an interest in politics that was different. I guess I was more involved than other kids my age is what I'm trying to say, middle school time or so. And that carried on through my adult life. I felt like, for many reasons, I was a very, very proud American all my life. I always felt lucky and honored and privileged, absolutely, to be born in the United States. And, growing up, I always felt like, we have a country where we have these rights that nobody can ever take away. My grandpa would talk about it a lot. He would talk about the founding fathers and how unique it was to have that group of individuals in the same place at the same time back in the 1700s, who were able to pen two of the most consequential documents in the history of mankind, and with their subsequent actions change the course of history. And Ronald Reagan spoke a lot about that in his speeches. The little band of men so wise beyond their years that the world's never seen their like since evolved the idea that you and I have within ourselves the God-given right and the ability to determine our own destiny. So as I grew up and I heard things like that, it resonated with me. And I think that's important in all of us, to find things that we resonate with and then go with that as your passion and keep going with it until it, kind of runs its course, I guess, and then just keep going more until you find your new passion or whatever. But that was a passion of mine, and it still is to this day. However, going up until 2016, up until that election, I was always involved. I volunteered, I donated, I did everything. I had my bumper stickers and my yard signs and all that. I was a good patriotic American and blah, 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 blah. So 2016 happened, and I made the decision that I wasn't going to vote for either candidate. I would never vote for Hillary. I just never trusted Hillary. That's just how that was. I just didn't. My gut feeling was like, I do not trust her, and it has nothing to do with her being a woman. I would vote for plenty of women for president, not Hillary Clinton. I wouldn't vote for Trump either back then. So I was like, no, I got caught up in his tweets. He's unpresidential. He's this. He's bombastic. He's going to get us in trouble. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has no experience. I just kind of gave up on politics. I was like, whatever. I was actually probably more comfortable that Trump won than Hillary, for sure. However, I was just like, is this the best we can do? Really? So I just kind of gave up. I moved firms. I was in the financial services industry, and I moved to a different firm. And so I started this new job where I had all this responsibility, and I just focused on that. And I used to watch the news. I used to pay attention, and I stopped. So without getting into specifics, about 3 years later, in 2020, there were things that happened that started to throw into question a lot of things that I thought about a lot, I guess. And it was, you could say, oh, it was COVID. But COVID was involved. However, it wasn't just specifically COVID. It was all the little things that were happening in there, and then other things as we went on, the election and beyond that. And what that did was that got me actually questioning and searching for answers. And all my life, there's things that didn't make sense, right? But especially when you're younger, you don't think, oh, well, that doesn't make sense, so that's not right. What they're saying isn't right. What you do, you usually say, well, it doesn't make sense to me, but it doesn't have to make sense to me. But then this time was different. It just felt like, yeah, this doesn't make sense, and I've got to find answers on this because I'm not comfortable with something. And I couldn't tell you exactly what it was. I couldn't tell you exactly what I was looking for. I didn't know what I was looking for. But I knew that there was something that I needed to find. I needed answers to something, and it wasn't coming from the media, and it wasn't coming from our government. It was something else, and it was just inside me, and I just knew it. So there comes a point when you're in the middle of all this research, okay, that you're getting close, and we're talking like maybe at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. You're getting real close to something. You know that you're on the right track because things you see different things. They start tying right into each other. They start you see something that you saw maybe a few weeks ago. All of a sudden, you're like, oh wait, and you can start putting it together. And you know that you're like, okay, there's something big here. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's something really big here. And you're at that point where it's like you can either stop, turn back, and just go away with it and just be like, okay, never mind. Because if you keep going, then you kind of know things are going to be different for you for some reason. You just know this. Like you're going to find out something that maybe is like, I'm a little like, I don't know what I'm going to find out, but I know it's not going to be like something that I expected, and I know it's not going to be necessarily great, right? But you come to that point. And so I'm sitting there in the chair and in my place, and I'm just like thinking, I put my head down, and all of a sudden I like look up, and Lawrence Fishburne's right there. as Morpheus. He's just sitting right there in the chair across from me. Sunglasses, big leather dress, everything.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
So when he said that to me, I kind of, looked at him and I was like, who dresses like this? Like, I'm not going to take a pill from somebody dressed like this. You look like Klaus Schwab's emperor. He looks like an intergalactic dictator wearing that. He looks like if aliens had invaded the planet and then, they defeated us and we're all out there waiting for our new overlords to come out. He's the guy that's walking out, that's standing up in the ship over everybody, holding his arms up, and Klaus Schwab's right next to him. So I'm like, I'm not taking any pills from you. So luckily, this was a metaphor. Plot twist. Lawrence Fishburne was not actually there. This was all a metaphor. It's what we call that here in the biz, even though this is my first. So anyway, so I metaphorically decided to take the red pill. And it actually wasn't that big of a choice for me. I'm like, I'm at this far. You can't stop. I doubt anybody in that situation that I was in would stop. I know many, many people who've been in that situation and they didn't stop. So you keep going, you keep digging, and you find yourself not too long after that, because you know it's coming, that you're on one day, and not even one day. It's like on one side of a millisecond. You're just looking for answers. You're close. You're just trying to figure out what's going on. On the other side of that millisecond, you don't know the full story, the full scope, the full picture of everything at all. But you know what's going on. It hits you. What generally the structure about what's going on and how it's happening. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of things start falling into place because of, usually what happens is you see something like a video that somebody put together or something like that explains it differently, that kind of puts different words in there. Because for me, I didn't really I was trying to think of how the people would be involved. And you always think of these elite groups and stuff like that, which are, absolutely involved. However, this video put it as calling them criminals, criminal conspiracy, this criminal cartel. And it was all just about calling these people criminals. And that kind of resonated with me because, that's kind of what they are, right? But I didn't look at it that way. But if you look at it as this criminal thing going on, and how there are people who, if you look at Jeffrey Dahmer, for instance, everybody, when they watch a documentary, everybody's always like, I can't imagine doing something like that. And, who could, right? But Jeffrey Dahmer didn't have money. He was in a 1-bedroom apartment with walls that are paper thin doing this. Okay. And still was able to manage to, do what he did. Imagine Jeffrey Dahmer with billions of dollars, right? I'm saying there's people out there who have the finances and the wealth and the resources to commit crimes. Not, maybe not a serial killer. Sure there are, but they have the resources to commit crimes, and they have the resources to run for office places and, pay for it and pay or put money into campaigns of their criminal friends and that kind of thing. And you start to see that as possible. And you're just like, oh, okay. And you can start to see how that can snowball. You can start to see how it would only take a few to start off with to really start to cause issues. And then that would lead to somebody in maybe a senator, that would lead to judges, that would lead to the president of the United States, potentially. Imagine if a criminal became the president of the United States, just one. That's all it would take, because it would be done. Every person they could appoint throughout the entire government that would be in charge of appropriating funds here and here and here and here to all their friends out there would just be one big money laundering scheme. And you can see how that is kind of in place. I mean, where's all the money going? We spent $9.5 trillion with the T, state, federal, and local last year not just per taxpayer, per individual in this country. That's $28,600 that we spent we should have golden schools made of marble, gold, and granite that our kids are in. We should have the best health. We should have the best of everything. And it's we never do. They'll say we have the best healthcare system. I'm like, well, we have a healthcare system. Saying it's the best is your opinion. What's best? It's very expensive. The Affordable Care Act didn't make it more affordable, just like the No Child Left Behind Act didn't do shit for education, Just like the Patriot Act didn't do shit to protect us. They're spying on us, God damn it. Like literally. And we're just like, it's for our security. We need this. We must be spied. I like being spied. I've got nothing to hide. They'll find something. I don't necessarily have anything to hide, but it's like I don't want the government in my business. And that's another thing you start to realize through this whole process is how through your entire life you were in this thing and you didn't even realize it. And what do I mean by that? So I've always been, I don't even say libertarian, because a patriot, like a guy who was like, this country was founded by we the people. We started this country, we control this country, and we've lost control. We don't need the government doing everything they do. They've convinced us that we do, and by providing every service they possibly can, even though there's like 18 in the Constitution that we specifically said do this, but nothing else, and now it's like thousands. But the entire time, as somebody who was always more towards like the right of things, there were things that I was on the left on, or in the center and the left a little bit, but mostly to the right, on just like center right, like most of the country, maybe a little bit more, just because I was buying into the whole party thing. You know, you have to go over with you're a Republican or Democrat, and you got to go to your corner and fight for your team. They turned it into a sport, just like anything else. You got to pick your team, fight your team, even though your team sucks. We'll say we suck. We suck, but that other team, they're dangerous and a threat to democracy. So you're on the good sucky team. Okay, so you've got to like sometimes sacrifice what you really think if our party platform goes a certain direction. Because if you don't, that other person might get in and they're dangerous, even though we suck. But I realized that every time there was any type of debate that happened, any type of debate, didn't matter what it was about. I didn't realize this till recently, which is crazy to me. As somebody who wanted to see limited government, we already lost the debate before we even started, because the debate is always and always has been framed around who has the best government plan to fix the issue. And that's where it starts when you're on the news and they're talking about an education plan or whatever, infrastructure, whatever. And you have the right guy over here and the left guy over here. They're both just arguing for their best version of a government fix. And everybody on the right got caught up into or anybody on the right who was more of like or on the left, who was more of like a limited government type of person. It was always just a debate between which government program was going to fix it. Nobody was ever just said, what if there wasn't a government program to fix it? It seems as though every time we have a government program to fix something, we spend $1 trillion trying to fix it, yet it seems to get worse. Because 4 years from now or 8 years from now, when we have another president, even though we had an education and healthcare and immigration, all these crises before that we fixed with all these big $1 trillion bills, we fixed them. But there's just going to be more of the same crises and the same thing. We'll still have an education crisis. The test scores never improve. The cost of care and healthcare never goes down. Have you been to the hospital recently? I wouldn't say that's quality care as far as like the best in the world. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not disparaging doctors or nurses or teachers here. These people go into these professions wanting to help. They get caught into a system where they can only do so much. If you're a teacher and you're got 20 kids per class and you got 5 classes, you got 100 kids, how can you at all be able to spend the quality time with the kid to find out what's important to them? But our education system isn't even about that. And we're going to do a whole episode on education here and coming up very soon. There's going to be actually 3 or 4 episodes that are going to be launched right in succession starting off. And one of the episodes, we're going to the deep dives on education. And our education system isn't about finding what's important to that individual child and what makes them tick and what fire burns inside them, because it's all a standard curriculum. And even if it was based upon that, the way it's structured, there's no way a teacher could have 100 students or whatever they have and be able to do that. In reality, the only people qualified to do that are the parents. But anybody who decides to not put their kids in the education system and homeschool their kids, did you hear about them? They're new to the town, but they homeschool their kids. don't they know their kids aren't going to learn social skills? Yeah, it's a really good idea to throw kids that have no idea what's going on into these gigantic buildings with 1,000 other kids and just say, learn your social skills and learn everything. Have fun. Bye. I'm going to work. We're both going to work because that is not fair to the other one. It is misogynistic if the husband goes and, becomes miserable his entire life going to work, 9 to 5 every day, thinking about what he's going to do the next day while he's at home. That wife or that husband, maybe the wife goes, I've seen this. There's plenty of situations, but that wife or that husband, they deserve to be just as miserable as the other one. And you've been told that by your own government and others, by pop culture. Don't let that man be the only one that goes and pays us taxes. You go pay taxes too. You go be miserable too. You let us teach your kids. We got it. Don't worry. Of course we'll teach them. Of course your government's going to teach them about their rights as Americans, because that's what we're about. Even though we're going to have them for 12 years and they're not really going to know anything about life skills when they come out or what they want to do or who they are or anything like that, really. They won't even know how to write a resume or do an interview. But we had them for 12 years and you were paying taxes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Here's your kids back. Does that make sense to you? Does that seem like the best situation? I mean, of course they position homeschooling as like this crazy idea because they don't want you to homeschool. They want your kids in there, of course, right? So maybe homeschooling's not the answer. Maybe it absolutely is important for kids to become social and get in those situations. But as adults, do you enjoy being in a building with 1,000 other people for 8 hours a day that there's cliques and there's this? I mean, I feel like that's where a lot of issues come from, actually. You're just like, here, go in there with all these kids, and then we complain when somebody gets bullied. It's like, there's 1,000 kids in there. They're kids. Of course that's going to happen. You can't watch them all, let alone educate all of them, actually. Nobody's getting education anymore. I don't even know what that is. It's indoctrination, really, if you think. I mean, if your government's writing a curriculum, and they do, and the curriculum is standard, regardless of the kid. I struggled in school because of the way they teach wasn't suitable for me. I mean, I did decent, but it was a struggle because I did, like in math, I would always get the answer, but it's like, you didn't show your work. I'm like, well, why would I need to show my work? Isn't it enough that I solved this stupid problem that I'm never going to have to solve? Now you want 3 pages of work on how I got to 3? Well, that's an F. Okay, well, I'll take an F, whatever. You're stupid. But it's not them. They're just doing their jobs. Again, it's not the teachers. It's not the doctors. It's not the nurses. They're going into these professions thinking, I want to help. But their hands are tied. They can't help, really. If you empowered them to do what they want, teach these kids what they thought was important, like, how to change a tire or something like that might be good, or balance a budget. Yeah, that would be good. Or how about the law? How about the actual law? Like knowing something about your rights, knowing something about how the law actually works. But here's the thing with that. Most adults don't even know that. And what I'm saying is I'm not even talking about like the law that we think the law is. Most adults have no clue the law that we're under in this country and around the world. We're all in the water, man. We're all in the water. We're just along for the ride. We're floating along on this vessel called Earth in this sea called the Milky Way galaxy or whatever, and we're just all vessels, and we're on the water, and it's all maritime law, banking and commerce and contracts. And we'll get into all that. That's there's a lot to unpack there. And understanding the law that we're under and how it all works and how it all ties in together. And those are some of the things you start to learn after you get on the other side of that millisecond. So when you learn this, and let me just tell you what we learn, okay? This is what you learn. There's a global criminal conspiracy. There is. And I don't care how you want to be like, oh, he used the C word, the conspiracy word. Yeah, I'll use it because people understand it, unlike collusion. I wonder why they just all started saying that at the same time, right? But there's a global, let's call it something else, cartel. It's a cartel. It's a cartel, a global criminal cartel that involves banking, that involves corporations. Everything's a corporation and crazy system. But here's the thing. Here's the best thing about all this. You learn about this global criminal cartel that has basically taken all of our money. And again, I'm not going to get into specifics right now. I mean, this is not what this is about. I could sit here and start to throw out every little thing that I've ever heard. I'm not going to talk about the cyborg pigeons. I'm just not going to do it, okay? Shit, I just said it. Wasn't supposed to. Okay, just FYI, as far as I know, there are no cyborg pigeons. I just made that up, okay? I'm dead serious. I just made that up. I do not want somebody out there spending the next 12 hours going to parts of the internet they shouldn't looking for cyborg pigeons or actually chasing pigeons trying to see if they're act weird or something. But again, not a thing. I just said that as a joke. Seriously. Okay. But I'm not just going to just talk about that kind of stuff. We need to really this is very important. We need to unpack this. The entire point of this show is not to just expose the corruption and get everybody all upset and scared because there's nothing to be scared about. There's absolutely nothing to be scared about. They are way more scared of you and me and us than anything else because there's a lot more of us than there are of them. So the more of us that wake up to it, the more we can exercise our free will to move past it. That's what this show's about. This show is about empowering us to stand up, not to go fight them, not to go fight anybody really, but to stand up and take what is rightfully ours, which is the republic back. We, the people who started this republic, we should be able to do whatever we want, whenever we want, however we want. Live our lives filled with joy, love, happiness, the pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There it is right there. Not life, liberty, the 9-to-5 job that, and all these taxes and then all this other thing, the Social Security that they take and then the Medicare that they take that they never seem to have money for, that if we don't raise the debt limit, then all of a sudden we're going to default. And it's I didn't spend all that money. You did. Don't tell me you need to let us go into more debt or else we're in trouble. We're already in trouble. What are you talking about? That's all I'm going to talk about when it comes to the why. I gave the brief overview there. You kind of have a rough idea about where I'm at here. And again, I know it's broad when I say this global criminal cartel of bankers, but it's pretty intense, all right? And I can tell you this, I know for sure it's happening in my heart, my head, and my gut. If it doesn't resonate with you, it doesn't resonate with you. If you're on the process of waking up at the moment, then great. I want you to listen and kind of hear what we have to say and I want to have guests. I want to have listeners on as guests to tell their stories about this. I would like to hear your story because you don't hear it very often. I do sometimes, but everybody has their own unique story when it comes to it. And maybe that'll resonate with somebody else. Or maybe you're already woken up and you're just, wanting to get more information and you're trying to figure out when it's going to happen. Maybe Casper knows. I'm going to listen to Casper because he may know something. I'm going to see if he knows anything. They're just going to switch off when I don't. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know. And neither do you. And neither does anybody else out there. Specifically know when things are going to happen. All I'm going to say to you is this. Look at the events. If you're that far in, then you know kind of what some things are going to look like afterwards. Right? So you have to understand. That's just not going to be tomorrow we're going to wake up and then there's a new financial system in place. No, there needs to be events that happen that lead that to happen. Just like up to now, you've seen other events happen that have caused other, of these institutions to go down and stuff like that. They're making it look more organic, even though obviously it's being forced. There's no way. And that was part of one of the reasons why I started asking questions, because at the time it was okay, this is a little weird because it's the same things I've been confused about before that didn't make sense. And it's just more of it at once. And then there's more, and then there's more. And it's okay, this is almost like you're watching a movie. So we are going to get into a very exciting time, and that is breaking the news. So this is when we're going to talk about the news of the day, but we're not going to cover it like the mainstream media does with their paper right here, always a stack of paper, and a pen in their hand. Although they never use it, they always have one. So I have one too. So I've got my papers and my pen right here. We're ready to go. So this is going to be, covering the news a little bit differently, but at the end of breaking the news, there's actually a sub-segment of breaking the news. That's a little twist that you're going to enjoy. So at the very end, we'll talk about that. I know that everybody is all like, President Trump got indicted again. If you're on this side, you're like, this is it. The walls are finally closing in, as they say.
His attacks, the walls are closing in on him. The walls are
Don't just stand there, try and brace it with something.
It feels like the walls are closing in on the White House. It feels as if the walls are closing in here.
I think the walls of justice are closing in on President Trump.
Increasingly desperate, feeling like the walls are closing in.
The president clearly feels all the walls closing in on him in terms of the Russia investigation.
The walls are closing in. I think at this point, the walls are spinning.
It does feel like the walls are closing in, but I think that the administration at this point can start to see the walls closing in.
He feels the walls closing in on him. Everybody he talks to says the walls are closing in.
This is another potential wall closing in.
This president is feeling the walls are closing in.
The walls, meanwhile, are closing in on the president of the United States.
I think he's feeling the Russian.
That goes for minutes longer, and that's just part of from 2017. The walls are closing in, but it's like every single time it's like, we got him. And I don't want to cover this too much. I do not want to get into this too much because at the end of the day, we all know why this is happening. Not all of us, but we know they're setting a precedent, basically. They're setting a precedent for, presidents. I mean, anytime anybody does anything like that, it's always going to backfire. But the only question I would say to people to ask yourself on this, because I'm not going to talk much about this, other than to say that we know for a fact that when Biden was a senator and a vice president, that he took documents and he had them at his home in Delaware. We just learned that, right? But but when Trump was president, which he has the ultimate authority to declassify, and it cracks me up when people are like, well, it has to go through approval process. No, he's the president of the United States. Who's going to look at him and say, sir, that's not approved. You can't do that. He has the ultimate right to declassify whatever he wants. If he goes to the document and says, this is declassified, then it's declassified. He's the president. If he can bomb a country, I think he can wave this piece of paper around and say, this is declassified. And you can't do anything about it. Right? But no. I'm sure Stormy Daniels was involved somehow too. Maybe she's, maybe the classified documents are about the actual, real story with Stormy Daniels, because maybe if we put her back in, we ran out of things, so we just had to circle back to Stormy Daniels. Putin might be next or something like that. Although I did want to say that it was kind of interesting to me when, Trump's getting arrested, and then like the day before, I think it was the day before that Biden did the.
No one's had to threaten to do anything. Voluntarily open every single aperture I have with the house, offices, everything for them to come and look and spend hours searching my home. Invited them. Nobody, and the best of my knowledge, the kinds of things they picked up are things that from 1974.
I know they were in Mar-a-Lago with Florida and the palm trees and the beautiful beaches and the sun and the great food and stuff like that. But come up to Delaware. We have beaches. I mean, they do. I mean, I think they do. I mean, I'm sure they're quite there. I mean, nothing against Delaware, but it was always kind of that state that when you're a kid, you're like, is it really there? Does it exist? And then like when you're an adult, you're like, okay, you have to drive through it to get to somewhere else because it's the only time you're really in Delaware. And then you're like, oh, here it is. Okay. So it's here. But, come on up to Delaware. And you know what? Actually, I mean, I don't want to piss anybody from Delaware. I've actually been to Delaware several times. I'm just joking around. But like, come on up to Delaware. We'll have some cookies. Jill will make some lemonade. Maybe we'll put some vodka in there or something. Yeah, come on up, guys. You're my peeps anyway. Y'all did that whole Russian collusion thing for us. Come on up. We'll act like things are good. And by the way, they're from 1975. Some of them are like 1975 anyway. I mean, these things have been classified for 50 years sitting here. Isn't there there has to be like some sort of squatter rights for classified documents after a certain number of years? They just belong there, right? No big deal. So, I mean, come on, so honestly, if you're looking at this situation, because this is exactly what Trump's being indicted for, it'd be pretty difficult to see two exact things happening right next to each other, one being treated the way it is and the other not, and not to look at that and say there's something seriously wrong with the Justice Department taking out their biggest opponent in the presidential election. Because don't we remember when Trump was president and something happened with Ukraine and Joe Biden, there was this big, he's taking out his biggest opponent. Well, no, they actually are doing that now. And the same people who were screaming don't really have a peep. But you know what? Moving past that document thing, I'm not worried. Don't worry about that stuff. Ukraine. Ukraine's is a big deal, obviously. It has some geopolitical consequences to things. And geopolitics is a big part of where we're headed here. You know, you're going to see a confluence of events of a bunch of different things come together, it seems like. And Ukraine's a big part of it. It's important to hear from our leaders and understand what they're thinking and their knowledge of the situation. So first we will go, we have Congressman Bowman, and he is talking about Ukraine. There is either a journalist or a constituent or just somebody walking with him who asked him about the Donbass and Crimea.
What do you want to discuss? The Donbass and Crimea? I don't know if I know much about that. I need to get into the details and learn some more about that. Yeah.
You know what those are?
No. Tell me. Educate me.
Well, let me ask you this. What's your opinion on the war for Ukraine? Do you support U.S. aid to the war in Ukraine?
Yes.
Why do you support that?
Because Putin's a madman, and we got to stop him. But I'm anti-war in general.
Yes. Putin's a madman and he must be stopped, even though I have no idea what. I hope he's joking. And look, I mean, if he is joking, that's not good either. Like, you don't joke about that. Like, I don't know. Donbass and Crimea, you're a congressman. I kind of got the impression like he wasn't really familiar with that, which is kind of scary. Why are you for the right? Because Putin's a madman. I'm generally anti-war until it comes to spending $100 billion on weapons that Ukraine somehow keeps running out of. But anyway, that's a little troubling, wouldn't you say, for a congressman? You know, I mean, you're being filmed. Would you like say all that? But, you know, I think he's better off right now than Lindsey Graham is, I think, but there was actually some protests up in Russia. And according to the subtitle, they're saying fascist NATO, the Nazi senator, and they all have a big picture of Lindsey Graham. There's about Russian students, or so it looks like. A couple hundred or more, I don't know. At this little protest, and I wonder why. Let's take a look.
Free or die. Free or die. Now you are free. Yes. And we will be. And the Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent.
Right. You know, I can't understand why the Russians would be pissed at that. Like, now the Russians are dying, and it's the best money that we ever spent. You have a couple of sociopaths sitting there, like, being happy about people dying. Nobody should be happy anybody's dying. No, it's good the Russians are dying. We don't like those Russians because they have Vladimir Putin. Oh, Lindsey Graham. Talk about cyborg pigeons. Whoa, guys. You know, I'm always worried about being on some platforms and saying certain things, saying certain words, phrases, because they're going to be like, oh, you're not supposed to talk about that. You're a danger. We think everyone else is stupid and can't discern for themselves, so they can't have any misinformation out there because everyone else besides us is dumb. So you have to kind of think about things you say. And, you know, one of the words that I thought about or not saying was something like deep state. Okay, deep state. That word or phrase, 2 words. But if we just kind of like have our own little, you know, Casperese going on here, or Slatonese or something like that, we could, I know that's horrible. I shouldn't say that, like, because that's just like both of those sound really stupid, but that's okay. I mean, I'm working with, I'm not married to either one, so suggestions are welcome. But what if we just like said, instead of deep state, we just said cyborg pigeons? I think that's pretty cool, right? It actually like makes them look a little cooler than they are. Like Mitch McConnell, a definite cyborg pigeon. Like, but calling him a cyborg pigeon makes Mitch McConnell look cooler than he's ever looked in his life. And now that I think about it, if Mitch McConnell actually had that little head bobby cocking head when he walked like a pigeon, it actually wouldn't look that weird. Like, I feel like it would be something that, oh yeah, it looks like he would do that. Now, Lindsey Graham, it would look a little weird, but Mitch McConnell, no. Both cyborg pigeons, in my opinion. But let's get to some presidential candidates. These are the people, since Trump's getting indicted and, you know, he'll never be able to run for president because they're just, you know, it's just, he's done this time. The walls are closing in. They're closing down on him this time. They've got him. It's important that we look at what the other presidential candidates are saying about Ukraine. And first up, we have Chris Christie. So let's go, Chris.
Is thinking about this, except that he's been a puppet of Putin from the time he was president. And it always was disturbing to me. We would argue regularly about Vladimir Putin during the time that he was president. And I think it's very clear what we need to do. We need to give the Ukrainians every piece of military hardware they need to protect themselves against this aggression.
Doesn't matter who's talking, right, Republican or Democrat. That last thing he said, we need to give every good, is exactly what they're all saying. It's exactly what they're all. And I'm sure, I argued with he's a student. It's pretty bad when the Republican candidate now is going back and using the tired old phrases that really the Democrats aren't even using anymore. Like, he's a puppet of Putin, Chris Christie says. Really? Didn't we go all the way? We had arguments all the time. Well, wait a minute. Where was Putin? You were with him all the time. If he's a puppet of Putin, you're with him all the time arguing. Like, tell us, Chris, what makes him a puppet? What did you see? What did you see, Chris, if you were back there arguing, if you were just so intimately involved with, and I'm sure he loved your arguments, but anyway, it's Chris Christie. He does look good, though. It looks like he's trimmed down a little bit, happy for that. Maybe he's like, eating some salads and stuff like that, better than me. I had ice cream for breakfast and lunch. Anyway, but we're going to end with Nikki Haley here. And this right here, I think hasn't gotten enough coverage in the press. Nikki Haley, I think, is onto something with all this. So when we listen to this, I really think we need to pay attention because this is impressive.
What we have to understand is a win for Ukraine is a win for all of us because tyrants tell us exactly what they're going to do. What we heard, China said they were going to take Hong Kong. They did it. Russia said they were going to invade Ukraine. We watched that happen. China says Taiwan's next. We better believe them. Russia said Poland and the Baltics are next. If that happens, we're looking at a world war. This is about preventing war. And so the way you prevent war is not that we give cash to Ukraine, not that we put troops on the ground, but that we get with our allies and we make sure that we give them the equipment and the ammunition to win. Because when Ukraine wins, that sends a message to China with Taiwan. It sends a message to Iran that wants to build a bomb. It sends a message to North Korea testing ballistic missiles. And it sends a message to Russia that it's over. That's what we have to do. And keep in mind, everybody wants to know, well, how does this war end? It would end in a day if Russia would pull out. If Ukraine...
That is what she said. Okay. But beyond that, I want to make sure everybody understands what Nikki Haley just said, because I don't think most people do. And if Nikki Haley's is the first woman president, she's elected the next president. You have to really look back in history at the, if you look at like the generals that we've had in office, like George Washington, Ulysses Grant, and Eisenhower, all generals in big wars who won big battles. None of them, as amazing as those men are when it comes to military strategy, none of them thought of what Nikki Haley just came up with. None of them. You have to understand what Nikki Haley's saying is that if your opponent in a war would just surrender and accept defeat and go away, the war would be over. Oh, real. Think of all the lives that could have been saved over the years if we would have just employed Nikki Haley's strategy. I can just see her right after she's taken the oath of office. She goes up to the podium to give her inaugural speech, and she's like, "We don't have time for speeches. Get my new car. Take me to the White House." She's in the car, in the limo, on the way. "I'm going to the Oval, and I need two things when I get there. I want Vladimir Putin waiting for me on the phone and a Diet Coke." Because in a Nikki Haley White House, there are going to be Diet Cokes everywhere. She gets on the phone with Putin, though. After about 30 seconds of pleasantry, she gets into it. She's giving her strategy, her demand. Vladimir's on the other line. He puts it on mute, looks over at his people, and says, "Who is this? Who am I talking to? Who am I talking to?" And they say, "That is Nikki Haley, new president, Nikki Haley, President Haley. Oh, this is the new one they put. They just make it easy every time." And beyond that, just brilliant piece of military strategy. Just, tell Vladimir Putin, if you leave, this will be over. Don't you know that? Beyond that, did you hear? We're looking at a world war. But here's how you prevent war. by sending more weapons to Ukraine. You know, there's not very often that our Republican and Democrat friends up there, whether they're governors, former governors, current congressmen, senators, whatever, or in the news or whatever, it's not often that they all are on the same page about something. And they make us think that when they are, that it's a good thing. And it's not. I'm telling you right now, if they're all saying the same thing, because then tomorrow they'll be out there at each other's throats over abortion. They don't spend any money on abortion. They're spending billions and trillions of dollars on everything else. It's bipartisan. Infrastructure bill, $1 trillion. Oh yeah, I love that. Great bill signing ceremony at the White House and the Rose Garden. Yay, 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 yay. Look at us. We fixed it. And then the next day they're screaming about gay marriage, not spending any money on that. So let's drive a wedge with that. But anytime they're spending money, it seems like they're all on the same page. Maybe we should start thinking about that. I don't know. Just my 2 cents. I did have these words for Nikki Haley.
Holy shit. You got it, honey. You did it.
That's right, Nikki. You did it. Me in the shower. But actually, Marissa Tomei, she ended up knowing a lot of shit in that movie and taking over, man. That was a great movie, and she was great in that. So, hey, you know, maybe Nikki's got some potential there. We'll see. I doubt it. But she did speak with courage and confidence and conviction with her fingers, and she sounded like she knew what she was talking about. So there's that. But you know, I mean, but honestly, just like Congressman Bowen said, Vladimir Putin is a madman. A madman. So maybe, you know, because maybe it is good that we're doing this with Ukraine, because anybody who's going to blow up their own pipe. Oh, wait a minute. U.S. had intelligence of Washington Post. U.S. had intelligence of detailed Ukrainian plan to attack Nord Stream pipeline. You're kidding. The Russians didn't. Vladimir Putin didn't blow up his own pipeline? What? Because that's what we were told for weeks. I feel so betrayed now. Because we've gone from the Russians did it to, I think, some rogue group in Ukraine did it to these people. Now we're blaming the Ukrainians. Eventually it'll get back to us. But now we're blaming our allies. Somebody should let Zelensky know what usually happens to those that we put in power, like Saddam and Gaddafi and the Taliban. You know, just like just be careful, dude, because we don't have a good track record with this whole spreading democracy and spreading freedom thing around. But in all reality, guys, I mean, like, this is one of the things that's like, you know, I mean, come on. You're Vladimir Putin. You're sitting at your round table preparing your strategy for Ukraine. You have your generals and your advisors around. And you've said, we need to do something. What should we do? What strategy? Let's think outside the box here, Putin says. And as, you know, quiet comes in the room, and all of a sudden, I've got it. President Putin. One of his generals stands up. Yes, he says. The Nord Stream pipeline is going to bring tremendous riches to Russia and its people. We basically have a monopoly over Europe and their energy with this pipeline. So we're going to be like rich as hell with this pipeline. But let's blow it up. Yes, let's blow it up. They won't see that coming. It will be a surprise. Nikki Haley will never see this coming. Let's blow it up. Now, Vlad seems like the type of dude that always has a pistol within distance of his, you know, reach. So that's not exactly something that look, they want you to believe Putin's a madman that would blow up his own pipeline. Putin's not a madman. He runs a different country that has different interests. And by the way, guys, when the Soviet Union fell in early, 1990 or whatever it was, 89, 90, 91, that whole time that happened, it's documented that up to at least the Secretary of State and beyond, I think, made so many assurances to the Soviet Union, then Russians, that NATO will not expand, because we were in Poland, I think, at the time was the closest we were. And then I don't know how many times we've expanded since then, but I mean, it's a lot, even though we said we wouldn't. And the entire time, it's pretty much been like, Ukraine's off limits, guys. Like, you told us you weren't coming this far, and you keep coming. And Ukraine's off limits. And by the way, look what happened when they tried to put a foothold in Cuba that close to us. What did we do? I know that in school we may have heard of the Monroe Doctrine, but we probably don't remember what it was. Maybe we do. Maybe I'm not giving enough people credit and being judgy. I don't mean to be judgy here. The Monroe Doctrine basically says there's not going to be any Eastern Hemisphere power that's going to take a foothold in the Western Hemisphere. We won't allow it. We haven't allowed it. If you're Russia, you've got the United States and NATO basically as an organization to fight them, and they keep getting closer to their doorstep. What do you expect to have happen when they've been telling you the entire time that Ukraine is off limits? I'm not supporting Putin here because everybody's going to be like, yeah, Putin sympathizer. Like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm a realist here. I'm giving the full story that the media is not giving you. You're just getting platitudes from people. You've been hearing the same shit over and over again for a year and a half from everybody in the media and your politicians about Ukraine. And just like everything else, they're lying to you and they're wrong. They keep telling you how Ukraine's winning this war. The entire time I'm sitting back saying they're not going to win this war. And we need to know they're not going to win this war. Look at Vladimir Putin's not scared. He's not stupid. He's not a madman, just like everybody's a madman. You ever notice that? You ever notice how they're all madmen? And we always put the madman. Saddam Hussein that we put in power is a madman. Muammar Gaddafi, we put in power as a madman. The Kim Jong-ils whose songs and whatever are madmen. And I know this isn't the case, okay? But hear me out on this. I got to thinking about this recently. I feel like years down the road or whatever, where we have a more enlightened society and we can open up the world. Because we can't go to North Korea without a special passport approved by our State Department. And North Koreans can't come here. They can travel, but they can't go to Europe. They can't go to they can't go anywhere in our hemisphere, basically. And we can't go there. So we have no idea what's going on there as people. And they have no idea what's going on over here. And I thought to myself, like, if we opened up in the future where everybody could go anywhere they wanted and North Korea opened up, it's like all of a sudden their shields come down. They have flying cars everywhere in these big, beautiful cities. Everything's sustainable. There's no fossil fuels or coal. Everything's free energy, as my dog is trouncing around here. Also, our only other employee here at the podcast, her name's Primrose, and she's our legal department. She's our HR department. She's my closest advisor, like the chief financial officer and that kind of thing. So, she's my second in command down here, and she's my go-to. And you might hear her trouncing around here, but she's 10. She can do what she wants. Love her. So they have this oasis, and there's sustainable and it's beautiful, and everybody's abundant and wealthy and does what they want and how they want. And the entire time, it wasn't them being that way we said they were. It was them telling us, stay the hell out of here. We don't want you here. Do not come in here. We will use our lasers if you come in here. Okay? Because y'all are crazy and just stay out. Tell people whatever you want. Tell your people that we're crazy, whatever. I don't care. Just stay away. We don't want you here. Because doesn't that make as much sense? Wouldn't that be as plausible as there's this family, the Kims, who hate their country so much and hate their people so much that they love seeing them from the top of wherever they are in Pyongyang in this destitute squalor poverty that nobody seems to be trying to escape, by the way. You hear every now and then you hear these whatever. The only story you hear out of a country which we have no idea what's going on, but there's a story in our news about one person in North Korea got arrested for having a Bible. How did that get out? How would that have been news here? Does that make sense? I mean, again, people are like, well, you're just a conspiracy. Come on. One guy gets arrested in North Korea. I'm sure. Okay, maybe it happened. I'm sure it happens. But it's how did that make it into our news? We don't even know anything that's going. Did the North Korean government just announce to the world, we found a Bible? The rest of the world know we found a citizen with a Bible. Put it in your news reports that we just arrested them. I just don't know. But they're all madmen. And half of them we put in power. Then they became madmen. Amazing, right? We did want to mention the website. It's coming along. It's getting up there, and it's going to have all the information on the podcast. It's also going to have a resource links page. It's going to have all kinds of different resources in there. Like I talked about before, some of the things that I saw that really helped me along. I'm going to put a lot of that stuff in there. There's going to be documentaries in there. In the meantime, though, as of right now, this will be a page on the website, but it is the entire website right now, and that is the Patriot Den. This is the merchandise. This is not even it doesn't say if not us, if not now, although we will have merchandise that does say that. This is all original artwork and collections that we've put together here. And there's the Awake is Greater Than Woke collection, which you can see we have, lunch bags, affordable prices on all this stuff too. There's shirts, sweatshirts, dog collars, and mugs. This is the collection that we actually have most of the merchandise up for. There's still more coming. The other ones we're still putting up. There's the Digital Soldier collection. As we know, General Michael Flynn, who kind of coined the Digital Soldier. We have the Got Quantum collection coming here. We've only got a few shirts in there right now. There's more coming. Obviously, quantum's a big part of where we're going and understanding what quantum is. Everything is going to be quantum, basically. We do have, for our state national crowd out there, we have our We Come at Peace collection, which, again, there's more coming here. You can see there's shirts and hats, and we actually have some bumper stickers that have not been added to the collection, but they're actually up on the site right now. Kind of go through and see. But there's a few other collections on here as well, and more coming. And again, more coming to the website, but did want to point that out. Now, the final segment is very important, and it is called The Next Obviously Weird Situation Identified a Conspiracy by Everyone Who Insisted Trump Urinated on Russian Prostitutes. Now, we totally understand that's kind of a wordy segment title. However, it does illustrate something very important. And in the meantime, we do have a call set up today with myself on whether or not we want to continue with that, whether we're going to evolve from that, or we may just keep it. But in the meantime, when you're talking to your friends about the show, and in particular this segment, we wanted to make it easier because we know, you're going to have these conversations and it's very important. I know you're going to want to talk about it. So, and it's understandable, but we did want to make it easier for you to do so and communicate that. So we have come up with an acronym to help, and that is Now Siak Bu Ituwarp. Now Siak Bu Ituwarp would be the acronym for the segment. We felt that rolled off the tongue a little bit better than all those words, but now that I'm thinking about it, I need to write something down here for this call that I'm going to be on with myself later on. Check to make sure we did not plagiarize Now Siak Bu Ituwarp from a Joe Biden speech, because that sounds like something he would have said. Okay, now let's get into it. And what this is about is it's going to be about something that's in the news that is clearly, from what you can see and everything, and in this case there's like proof that there's more going on than what meets the eye and what we're being told. And it has to do with the Canadian wildfires. And, we're going to get into more of that kind of stuff, not just like stuff going on in the news, but that whole breaking through cognitive dissonance and using your discernment. And coming episodes, we're going to talk a lot about that because that's very important in this whole process, to kind of break down some of the built-in beliefs that we have through, and, that cognitive dissonance that we block it out with. And our subconscious is doing that. We don't even realize it's happening. But, the whole point of the title of the segment is to say that we all know that's bullshit now, even though we had investigations for 3 years based upon the whole dossier, the Steele dossiers thing with Trump. And we all know it's bullshit now, although there's many people out there who probably don't even realize that, who are probably like, once their subconscious realized it was all bullshit after the years of investigation, they just block it out because they don't want that belief system brought down. And it's understandable. I was there, so, I understand it, but we'll get into that because it's very important if you want to understand what's going on in the world and kind of move forward with everyone else in a positive direction, then eventually it's going to have to happen. So, again, that's kind of what we're trying to do here. But let's take a look at the Canadian wildfires. Let's see what everybody's saying about it, because in the news we've got human activity caused the majority of the Canadian wildfires. Well, that's what they were saying a few days ago, because even in CBS, that was the USA Today, and CBS, how did the Canadian fires start? Most fires in the forest in northern Canada are started by lightning, which is what they're moving to. This article was actually edited since it was released a couple of days ago, because it says later on in there, it says there's cigarette butts and sparks from passing trains. That was originally a big part of the article. And I remember the first thing I heard was that it was like pot smokers. And I'm like, what? So like a bunch of stoners went around Canada, got high and we're like, hey dude, here's what we're going to do. We're going to spread around the country and we're going to use our bongs and these, everything to like start fires as we get high, man. This is going to be so cool, because that's what stoners do. That's what people who smoke weed do. They like starting fires and blanketing New York with smog. They just love it. But I mean, honestly, like here's the bigger issue. Here's the bigger issue, as they would say, from this. What we really need to focus on here in order to solve this. Were these bongs assault bongs? Because if they were, then we need an assault bong ban. You do not have the right to bear bongs. And I'm thinking, if that's the case, if it is a bunch of stoners, then maybe we should confiscate all the bongs. Let's take a look.
Outbreak of fires has taken place across a whole Canadian province all at once. Look up to the...
And for those listening and not watching, this is a satellite image he's talking about from Canada, where it shows how all these fires started at the exact same time, at the exact same moment, hundreds of miles apart.
Northeast, up here in Quebec. All of Quebec just caught on fire all at once on a clear day. I would say this would be some kind of terrorism of some kind, or an attack. Here it is. Here we are. I'm going to let the images load. You can see this morning. It's clear. Just partly cloudy skies. Nothing really crazy going on there. And then, well, here's last night. Here's today. All of southeast Quebec just caught on fire, guys. All of it.
Now, there's really no point in going too far into this, because if you're looking at this, I mean, you can, if you're listening, you can go, find there's a ton of these type of videos, not just from this person, but many people out there, where you can see this. The only thing I'm going to say about it is this, and then we'll finish up. They're distracting you from something. That's all it is. This is something that is coordinated. It is obviously something that wasn't just a coincidence. This is something that somebody did, and somebody did it at a very high level. And the only thing that you learn is this: they are distracting you from something else. Something else is going on. Look here, not there. What you have to remember is look there, not here, when they say that to you. Just wanted to say that, it's actually so exciting to be actually putting the content out there, and I hope that it resonates with people, and I hope that even if it doesn't, that you find it entertaining, how crazy things get in here. The title of this episode was A Do Hope, and I did want to mention how it doesn't matter how crazy things get, or pointing out, the criminal, all this stuff and everything like that. The whole point of this is not to just expose things, right? Because it's already been exposed. It's already been done and dealt with, okay? So in order to wake up, in order to get to that point, then you have to know what happened. So that's the only really reason that we want to bring that up. But the whole point here is to have people understand that we as humanity, as a country, as a world, as communities, and as people are due a huge amount of hope. And I know more than anything that I'll ever say, in my heart, I know that we have a future filled with that hope. All we have to do is stand up and go get it. It's sitting there waiting for us to take, but we have to take it. Even if everything else is taken care of for us, we have to stand up and go want that future, a future that we're going to get into on this show. Many things that we're going to talk about that are just amazing. And once you talk about them, it makes it easier to kind of see how it fits in. We're talking about technologies that are out there that we haven't had access to. We're talking about medical things like cures that we haven't had access to. We can talk about pharmaceutical companies and other corporations who have a huge amount of influence over patents and what gets classified as national security or something like that, so they can continue to make money. Once that system's gone, understand all that gets released, but it's up to us to make that happen, even though it's kind of being taken care of for us. I know that's a lot to unpack, and we're going to get into all of it. And I just am so thrilled and honored to have you along for the ride. And I'll finish with this, as I will just every time, and that is when it comes to our freedoms and when it comes to our free will and the future of our families and our communities, our states, our country, and our world. If not us, who? And if not now, when? God bless everyone.